Cause I'm happy. Come along if you know what happiness is to you. I'm happy. Come along if you feel like that's what you want to do. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you. Because I'm happy. Clap along if you feel like that's what you want to do.
Ooh, good morning, everyone. Happy Thursday. Hello to those of you that are here on the call and to those of you that are watching on Facebook. A reminder, if there's questions that come up, please make sure to either drop that in the comments or drop it in the chat box if you are here live on the call or the comments on Facebook, and I will work to get to all of them. We've been working through the Millionaire Real Estate Agent book, and we've been focused on that first piece. We've been talking a lot about mindset, right? Mindset and thinking a million, right? Thinking a million. It's that foundational part of the model. And yet where we want to jump into today is starting to get into the meat of it, right? Is okay, now, I have the mindset. I know that I want to work towards this goal, right? Whatever that number might be for you. I want to work to these goals, and how do I do it, right? What are the models that you've predetermined are here for success? And what we found is that there is both an art and a science to achieving your highest potential. And the models of a successful real estate business are a little bit more focused on the science. So we're going to jump into that as well. The other thing that I want to note, right, is we talk about this idea of our big why and having our big goals powered by a big why, right? When we go through Think a Million. So big why, knowing that, hey, we have a higher purpose for why we want to achieve what we want to achieve. I spoke with somebody yesterday that shared more about how their purpose of giving back, a philanthropy, was truly a driving force behind the big goals that they wanted to achieve, where it really comes down to the money being good for the good that it can do and the impact that it could make, right? And so being able to gain more income allowed for higher impact. That's a very big why, right? That drives the big goals. And yet, in our last section, we talked about the 8 goal categories of the Millionaire Real Estate Agent, and we have these big goals. Now, behind that, we also need to make sure that we have big models. So on page 120, Gary talks about how the difference between everyone else and top achievers is that top achievers purposefully choose big models in the key areas so that they can achieve their highest potential, right? So they can achieve their highest potential. In fact, we have to be a 20%er. So what does that mean, right? The 80-20 principle that we talked about is you have to understand that 20% of your activities, 20% of what you do is going to help you achieve 80% of the results. So the understanding has to be around what is the right 20%, right? What is the right 20%? Now, there are 4 fundamental models in real estate, right? 4. The first one is the economic model. How do we make money, right? How do we make money? And we'll dig into that a little bit more. But it's really, the economic model is essentially a formula that helps you reverse engineer your business. So think about your GPS, right? When you're going on any type of trip, you need an address so that you can input it into your GPS, and that GPS is then going to spit out certain directions, right? Make a left here, make a right here, whatever that looks like. And yet, if you don't know your destination, you're not able to have that plan. So think of the economic model sort of like that, right? It's too many times what ends up happening, an agent comes into the business and says, I want to make X amount of income. I want to do X, Y, and Z. And yet they don't actually look at, inputting that address per se into the plan, right? And really figuring out what does that actually look like. So when we start looking at the economic model, we'll dig into that a little bit more, but it's really having an understanding of what profit do you want to achieve, right? What profit do you want to achieve within your business from a real estate perspective? And let's reverse engineer that and look at what that takes in terms of activities, right? What does that take in terms of appointments, leads? What does that take in terms of listings? What does that take in terms of buyer, especially accounting for certain ratios like your conversion ratios and knowing your numbers? And when we dig into that piece a little bit more, I'll go over some of the averages for the industry, and then also some recommendations depending on where you're at in the business, right? Just in case you don't know your own numbers, but I highly encourage you to get real and get right about the numbers in your business, and build a business based on profitability. Too often, agents say, oh, I made 100K, I made 200K, I made whatever I made, and yet they're not keeping that in their pocket, right? Because they're not highly profitable. And that's where the economic model is going to come in to part of that as well. Model number 2, the lead generation model, right? The lead generation model. So lead generation is systematic, right? Lead generation is systematic. And what the lead generation model shows us is, how do we feed the funnel, right? How do we feed leads into our lead generation system such that they produce systematic and replicatable results, right? So not that I go chase a transaction, I call as many people as I can, and I find that one person that's ready to go right now. That's the numbers game. That's okay, but that's also a little bit of luck, right? That's also going to be a little bit of luck, is when we're a little bit playing that numbers game, right? That sort of numbers game. I like a different numbers game. I like knowing what's going to come out. I like having predictable results. I like knowing where the next transaction is coming from. I like being able to say, hey, I've got X amount of people in my database. They're in a particular plan. And so I know realistically that for every X amount of people, I'll get one transaction, right? That's replicatable. That's systematic. That's something you can sell, right? That's something you can sell. That's a database worth passing along. Right? So we'll talk about that as well as we go through the lead generation model. Number three is the budget model, right? The budget model. And we're going to be digging into that in a couple of weeks where we're really looking at outlining the specific budget categories of the millionaire real estate agent. What are those items that we need to be looking at within our own business, right? From a budget perspective, do we have the right budget in place for our business? Are we holding our money accountable? Are we holding our money accountable? So we'll be talking about the red light, green light, and what that looks like as it pertains to the budget model. And then the organizational model, So right now, if it is just you and your business, you are the CEO, you are the chief everything officer, right? You are the chief everything officer. And that's the first level of the millionaire real estate agent. Then we know, what do? We bring in leverage in the form of TCs. We bring in leverage in the form of admins. I will know administrative staff will always come before your buyer's agents, your listing agents, right? Too often an agent will go out and say, hey, I need a buyer's agent, and they don't have the right administrative support within their business yet. And so we'll talk about that, is why do we build the business a particular way when we're working through our organizational model, right? How do we build it? And why do we build it in a particular way? And so we'll go through that as well. I'm actually going to pop up a couple things on the screen. I will note, for those that are watching on Facebook, I may not be able to see your questions, but I will address them a little bit later. But I want to pop up and share this model. And if you're following along in the book, I want you to turn to page 122 and page 123. Okay, are you guys able to see this here? Yes? Everybody's good. Okay, awesome. So what I want to share here is, this is where we start really understanding the way that these models come into play. Now, models like these are the difference between what makes you a real estate business owner and a real estate practitioner, right? Models and systems are what change you from a real estate business, from a real estate practitioner, which is how most people start, right? We get into the real estate industry and we begin our business and we're kind of shooting at the wall, right? But when we put the right models in place, right? We put the right models in place. That helps us to move from practitioner to real estate business owner. And I want you guys to understand that we don't just think like a business owner. We have to make sure that we're becoming that. So this is kind of going to give you that graphic. This is the initial kind of easy way to look at it, knowing the numbers, focusing on appointments, focusing on conversions, right? In our lead gen model, prospecting and marketing, setting up a database and systematically marketing to it, focusing on our seller listings taken, our budget model, leading with revenue, playing red light, green light, like I mentioned, sticking to the budget, and the organizational model, when doing all you can, administrative help first, then talent, then training and consulting. Let's really dig into this a little bit more. So I'm going to go into the broken out model. And I don't want you to get nervous about the numbers right now, right? I don't want you to get too nervous about the numbers right now, because we will be going over this in some of the graphs as we start building out a little bit more on the economic model and a couple of the other models that we will be reviewing. So don't look at this and say, hey, this looks crazy, right? We'll work through it together. But I do want to know is that there's a lot that goes into each and every one of these models. So it's not just, know what numbers you must hit. It's, hey, okay, so let's really break it down, right? Closed sales, our average price, gross commission income, cost of sales, operating expenses, right? The number of seller appointments or buyer appointments that we need to have per month, the number of listings taken or contracts open with buyers per month, and the number of closings with each month, right? It gets a little bit more built in. Why do we focus on these models and systems? So Gary in the book, he talks about this idea of the hobo shack versus a business built on the solid foundation. And he shows two photos. One is literally a little hobo shack. And what happens is they're building on a foundation that is not built out, right? A foundation that hasn't been created. We all of a sudden, we get creative, right? We want to add our own twist on the business. And yet we talked about that with the triangle, is that we need to be built on a foundation, and creativity can come at the top in the form of, oh, maybe, this is how I do my marketing, not the system of marketing, but the graphics, right? Things like that. That's where we can have a little bit more creativity. When it comes to the models, the agents that are doing the best in their business have followed the models to a T. So I'll give you an example. You guys had a chance to connect. We connected with Christina Griffin, right, who's doing pre-foreclosure, top 1% agent in the nation, top REO agent in the nation. We had her on the webinar last month, and we were talking with her about, her business and how she built it. And the one mistake she said she made, right, here's a top agent in the nation, and she said the one mistake she made was she didn't initially follow the model, right? And that the goal then was to go back and have to restructure. Now, for you guys, I'd say right now, this is why this is so important, is because we want to build on the basis of the models that have already existed for us, so that we can continue to grow that right foundation of our business. So I do want to jump into a little bit more on the model number one, the economic model, right? The economic model. So I talked to you guys about that being a map. What I want you to do is, if you have a notepad in front of you, then what I want you to do is I want you to write down your profit number, right? In an ideal world, what is the amount of profit that you would want? Not the amount of gross commission income, right? I want to know, what amount do you need to keep, right? What amount do you need to keep? That's how we start our economic model, is that we have to know how much we want to make in order to really start holding ourselves and our activities accountable. Because somebody that wants to do 100K, somebody that wants to do 1 million, somebody that wants to keep, 3 million, the numbers that they need to hit in every other category are going to be a little bit different. And we all have some type of economic model, right? We all are performing certain activities that limit us to certain results, right? We just are not intentional about it. And this is where we want to get a little bit more intentional, right, about it. So I'll note a couple of the things that we need to look at as we build this out. We're going to look at the numbers that you must hit, right? The numbers that you must hit, a focus on appointments, and then we'll talk through focusing on conversion rates. So if you have a number that's in front of you right now, right, a profit number, then we have to start looking at some of our expenses. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna build this out in a different way, and I'm gonna show you guys. Now, we can do this on paper. It's a little bit harder when you're building it out on paper. There's some formulas, and I will show you those models as well. But I want to show you another tool where we can get the math done pretty quickly. Right, so give me 1 sec. Let me pop this up. Okay, I'm going to share my screen again, you guys. And we're going to go through 2 pieces on here. Okay, can you guys see this? Awesome. So if this is your first time doing this, now this is going to be, I want to know, if you are a guest, we can definitely do this same exercise on paper. It's just going to work a little bit differently, but I encourage you to take a look at some of the conversion rates that we're going to talk about. If you are with Keller Williams, then you can also follow along within Command, right? This is going to be the goals tab in Command, which is under your reports section, right? And for the first time you do this, you're going to go right into goal settings. Here's where I want to break this down for you guys, right? Is we're going to go in and select the year. You want to go in and put your profit goal in here first. So let's say in this particular case, let's say we're doing 250K, right? We know cost of sales is going to be right over here. Your cost of sales are going to be at things that are going to be important, such as a cost of sale, something that you get charged at the close of the sale, right? So splits, transaction fees, if you're doing any type of additional marketing that's paid at close of escrow, things like that, you can go ahead and put that in cost of sale. And then you're also going to want to go ahead right over here and put in your business expenses. So think about this, business expenses, right, are going to be things like board dues, right? Board dues are Supra keys, signage, marketing material, right? Whatever it is that we might be paying from a marketing perspective, we want to go ahead and enter those expenses as well and assume. So in this particular case, I'm going to do an assumption, right, that somebody that's doing about $250,000 in profit, at minimum, you know, there's a couple different numbers we can have here. I'm going to note, you know, a higher amount so that there's more that's being put in. I know a lot of people are doing Facebook ads and things like that right now so that we can kind of throw in a budget, right? When we start looking at business makeup, this comes down to what percentage of your business is coming from listings and what percentage of your business is coming from buyers, right? What percentage of your business is coming from listings and what percentage of your business is coming from buyers. So I know for most of you, this might be a little bit different. So I'm going to go ahead and throw in 50-50 here so that we can break it down. Now, if you're a heavy listing agent, if you are a more heavy listing agent, you're going to want to note that. If you know that right now, you know, you're working primarily with buyers, what I would look at is where do you want to be, right? Because this is going to spit out the numbers for you. So if you're saying, hey, right now I'm working, you know, 75% buyers and I'd like it to be more 50-50, put in 50-50, put in the goal, right? Because we want to break down the activities that it's going to take for us to achieve that goal. If you're doing any leases, you can add those as well. But we know that the commission is going to be a little bit different as we come to our leases. So let's note right over here. We know our average price point right now, right? We see commissions coming in. Depending, I know our average price point is about $550 to $575 in the local market right now. If you're working higher end, that's fine as well. And then go ahead and multiply that by your average commission, right? By your average commission. Is it 2%? Is it 2.5 that you're seeing out in the market? And then what does that look like? So at a 550, at a 2.5, we'd be looking at 13,750, right? I'm gonna note I like to be conservative, right? I like to be conservative, so I'm gonna stick with this 12,500 on both the buyer and the seller side, no listings. So you can see this is already starting to break down an annual profit goal, a required monthly profit goal. It's averaging out your average commissions, and we can start seeing what percentage of our estimated annual gross commission income goes to cost of sales and operating expenses. We're gonna go ahead and click next, right? Now we really got to break it down. What does this look like? This is about the conversion ratios, right? And I will share for those of you on the call, if you don't have access to this tool, I want you to go to kellerinc.com, KELLERINK.com. There is an Excel sheet in the resources, or you can reach out to me and I'm happy to overview this with you as well. There's an Excel sheet that you can kind of utilize to create your economic model, right? But here we go with conversion rates. So this is important. I want you guys to understand the difference between a lead and a contact, because historically in real estate, we've been taught that a lead is, oh, I got a lead. I got somebody that wants to buy or sell a home. And I'm going to flip the script on that a little bit, right? Because that was before the era of the internet. That was before we had in leads per se that came in online, right? On social media, things like that. So a lead is somebody that maybe has shown interest in your services, but they haven't engaged in a two-way conversation with you yet. So if you're running a social media ad and they submit their information, but you haven't talked on the phone with them or had a two-way conversation via text message, right? That's a lead. That's a lead. They've come into the system, but they haven't engaged, right? They haven't engaged. A contact is going to be a little bit different. A contact is somebody that I've now had a two-way conversation with, right? And I've established a relationship with, whether I've gained permission to stay in contact with them, right? And I've added them to my database, because what we know to be true is the number of true contacts, not leads, the number of true contacts that you have in your database will predict the outcome in your business. It's going to help you predict the number of transactions, not the number of leads, right? When we know we have a specific number of contacts and they're on a 36 touch plan that we'll talk about in the lead gen model, right? Then we can pretty realistically predict the number of transactions somebody will do in the next 12 to 18 months, right? Based on a true solid database. So that's going to be a little bit of the difference here. Now, once we actually have that next place is going to be the number of appointments set, right? Appointments kept, agreements. Agreements are going to be an actual listing or buyer agreement, under contract or pending, right? When a unit goes under contract, and then closed units. So I'm going to note there's going to be some default conversion rates that are in here that are based on the Millionaire real estate agent. Now, if you know that your conversion rate is different, then you can adjust that, right? But if not, I would go ahead and leave the default. So from leads, let's say for every 100 leads, 10% assumes that for every 100 leads, right, we have 10 potential contacts, 10 people that say, hey, yes, I am interested in having a two-way conversation. I would know when we were doing open houses, right? Somebody walks into your open house, they put their information in your open house book. Do we count that as a contact or do we count that as a lead? I personally counted that as a lead until they respond to a second attempt at communication, because in the open house era, what happens, somebody goes to 5 different open houses, right? They're not just going to yours. So we have to earn that contact, right? We have to earn that contact. But that's a personal preference on that piece. Leads to contacts, for every 100 leads, let's say 10 of them will become a contact. From appointments, right? For every 100 contacts, 15 will potentially become an appointment, right? From the appointments that we set to the appointments that we keep, right, there is a fallout ratio, a canceled appointment, somebody that decided to push their appointment back. In this particular case, we have a 75%. I'm going to drop this down a little bit right now because we're in a little bit of a different market, right? We're in a different market where people are saying, yes, I want to meet. No, I want to postpone it. They may meet again later, right? They may meet again later and they may follow up, but we're definitely seeing, you know, buyers and sellers that get a little nervous about the market and they want to meet and then they decide not to, or they're postponing. So you may want to drop that down a little bit. Appointments kept to appointments agreements, right? So for every 4 listing appointments that you go on, how many do you take? For every 4 buyer consultations that you have, how many result in a buyer broker agreement, right? We'll go ahead and put 50% here. And then agreements to under contract or pending. Now, this is interesting, right? We get a listing agreement, how many of them are closing? Or we get a buyer, how many of them actually move forward and open escrow? And that transaction ends up closing. The industry average is actually about 75%, right? The industry average here is about 75%. And then under contract or pending to close units, meaning they're actually under escrow, right? And now we want to close them, right? That industry average is about 70% as well. So we're going to note that in. I'm going to go ahead and save that, right? And now we've got a little bit more of a breakdown, right? A little bit more of a breakdown. So I'm going to go into what's next and I'm going to show you what this looks like now. Okay. So it's going to spit out the goals here, right? It's going to spit out the goals here as well so that we can break it down. At a $250K annual profit based on the ratios that we talked about, that's 22 closings, right? That's 22 closings. So if you started with a different number, right, it's going to give you your amount of closings, your amount of under contract, because if we know that only 70% of transactions will actually close, right? 70% of transactions will actually close, then we need a higher number of transactions. Too often we say, hey, I need to do, you know, X amount of income. So I want to do a transaction a month, and we don't account for fallout, right? We have to account for fallout. We have to shoot higher. Agreements. In this particular scenario, that's 44 agreements, 44 buyers and sellers that are agreeing to work with us exclusively. If we close out at a 75% ratio, appointments kept, that's 86, right? So let's really look at that. 86 divided by 12, that's about 7 appointments a month. So I would note, what does that look like, guys? That's 8 appointments, right? That I would estimate it at 8 because we can't do 7.1, right? I would estimate it at 8. That's 2 appointments a week. That's 2 appointments a week. So when we start breaking it down, now we can set some goals around that, right? Now we can set some goals around, okay, I need to have 2 appointments per week to be on track to do 250K, right? This is what this looks like. And then we get into contacts and leads, right? We have way more conversations in here, but I just wanted to kind of break this down for you guys, because it's going to be really important when we're looking at the economic model that we have an idea of how much we want to achieve and what does that take from an activity perspective, right? What does that take from an activities perspective? What does that truly look like? And now we can break it down on a month-by-month basis, right? Now we can break it down on a month-by-month basis. 7.16 appointments a month, right? To be on track to do 250K. 2 appointments a week. The Millionaire Real Estate Agent, guys, so that you guys have a little bit of an idea, the Millionaire Real Estate Agent formula is actually 1 appointment a day, right? 1 appointment a day that they're going on. A true Millionaire Real Estate Agent, when they track at 1 appointment a day, they will track for $1 million in profit, right? Not in GCI, right? But in profit, when they have the right budget models in place. So what I want you guys to look at from a homework perspective this week, right? Next week, we're going to talk about the lead generation model, and I'm going to draw that out for you guys, and I'm going to really showcase you what that looks like. But for homework this week, understand how much do you want to make profit-wise, right? How much do you want to make profit-wise? How much of your business do you want to be buyers versus sellers, right? If you're with us, utilize the goals tab, right? Utilize the goals tab to build it out. If you have any trouble with it, if you need support, connect with myself, Brandy, Fred, right? So that we can support you on building that out. If you are not with us and you're one of the guests that's watching on social media or on here as well, then I want to know, I'm more than happy to show you some resources where you can actually build this out. We can do it on paper. It takes a little bit of internal math, right? It takes a little bit of math in our head, and then understanding your price point and a couple of those pieces, but we can really move in and kind of break that down for you as well. So feel free to reach out to me as well, and I'm happy to help you with that, right? A lot of info today, the pages for next week, the lead generation model, right? We're gonna go into the lead generation model. We're gonna spend the entire time next week on the lead gen model, right? We're gonna spend the entire time, that's pages 133 to 152, right? And the reason that we're gonna do that is because that's an extremely important model. That's where most people start. A lot of people jump into lead generation before they figure out their economic model, which is not the way that we do it, right? That's not the foundation. We want to have our economic model in place so that we understand how many leads we need to generate and what systems we need to have. But I'm going to build out the lead generation model with you guys because I think it's important that you understand why we lead generate and how to lead generate most effectively and efficiently, right? To cultivate predictable results, right? Predictable results instead of shooting in the dark, right? So a lot of info for next week, right? A lot of info for next week. I know there's a lot on the calendar today. Make sure you check the email and text messages. And with that, I hope you guys have an absolutely phenomenal rest of your day. Bye, everyone.